Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Vaishnavi Gupta. Hoping you're happy and healthy. And today's video is very special as I have read this book Tuesdays with Morrie by mitchalbon, if I'm pronouncing it correct. And I'm going to review this book and summarize this book for you all. And फिर उसके बाद I don't think book पढ़ने की बिल्कुल भी ज़रूरत पड़ेगी because every line, every lesson that I learned, how I felt while reading this book. Also मैंने अपने स्कूल से borrow की थी ये, and also the use of this book, and this bookmark is ended now. So let's begin without any further. So as the name says, Tuesday with Morrie, Mitch is was a high school student of Morrie who is an old professor. So Morrie and Mitch were really close to each other when Mitch was in his high school, and Mitch used to call him his coach, and even Morrie liked that nickname of his. One fine day, Mitch saw him in a lawn sitting on a wheelchair. He went close to him and started telling him and talking to him. That's when he knew that he's gonna have his last session. And though the way everything is framed in this book is shown that the Mitch and Morrie both have a very friendly and playful bond with each other. Like in the first few pages, यही सब बताया है. And something about Morrie was Morrie lacked self-pity. Even after how he became so helpless, he accepted his fate because he was suffering from a disease जो आपको आगे पता चलेगा. Despite that, Morrie tried to live happily, and Morrie wanted to live even after he dies, whereas Mitch was occupied with his workhood, and he was living his life, but he was not yet satisfied. And so let me just read what all summary I have written quickly to tell you a very brief starting में. So Morrie was Mitch's old professor who died because of ALS, a disease which makes a person feel like being frozen inside your own flesh. He got to know that he was going to die in a year or so he took some classes discussing about life and death. तभी इस book का नाम is Tuesdays with Morrie, and this book talks about life's greatest lessons. Whereas Mitch, the student, was a carefree person who used to wander in his 20s. But as soon as his uncle died, who he wanted to be like, he realized that time is precious and started working day and night. What I feel is that we should live our lives to the fullest. There are a lot of Bollywood and Hollywood movies on this telling us to live our life to the fullest and being in present and not worrying about past and future. But when someone you knew you were very close to somebody or one of your family member dies, then it hits hard. Because then you think about what you could have said and what you could have done for them and rethink about all the things they said to you, especially if it's a sudden death. Unlike Professor Morrie, who was full of life, despite wanting sympathy, he wanted to utilize his time to the fullest. And he even attended his own funeral, not in real sense, but he called the people, and the way there is a culture of speaking and like a poem or a speech for the one who died, he had that session or funeral for himself. And it was called a living funeral. And they shared a student-professor bond, but more friendly. Further, on the first Tuesday, they talked about the world while reading the newspaper and all about what's happening in the whole world, having Mitch sitting in front of him. And further in the conversation, Morrie partially agreed with the fact that he should not care about the world at this point because he was about to die. But Morrie realizes that there is much more pain than he is suffering from. Mitch always learned a lesson from what Morrie said. And that's when Mitch decided to meet Morrie every Tuesday because he knew that he was about to die and he wanted to ask so many questions to Morrie. So they decided to meet on every Tuesday, and they were called the Tuesday people. Morrie even observed in his college years and even now that Mitch don't say much, but he even believed that Mitch had a lot to say, and it reminded him of someone, and that somebody was Morrie himself. And as I read further in the book, I realized that their bond is very compatible. Anyways, second Tuesday comes, they talk about feeling sorry and human kindness. And Morrie exclaims that he's lucky that he got time to say goodbye to his family, friends, students and relatives. Not everyone is so lucky, he said. And there Mitch thinking that this old guy sitting in front of him, he's unable to stand, to wash, to move, to even pull on his pants, and he called himself lucky. They had more conversations like this, and this was the end of the second Tuesday. Then comes the third Tuesday. They talk about regrets, and the author even takes his tape recorder with himself that day. The author realized that we all needed a teacher in our lives, and for him, it was Morrie, a person sitting right in front of him. Further, he wanted clarity on a lot of things, just like any other confused and tortured human being, he said. And he even listed a lot of things like mentioned here. You can see. Okay, it says death, fear, aging, greed, marriage, family, society, forgiveness, and a meaningful life. This was the list in his back, and he actually talked about everything mentioned here. Further, Morrie tells Koppel, the interviewer. So there was this person who came to interview Morrie because he knew that he was about to die and how Morrie was playful and very, practical and a loving person. So he started a series or a show, I guess. So he was the director or the interviewer who took interview of Morrie a lot of times. So he came to Morrie to take his interviews before he dies, and they were even friends. So he talks about how he feels. And also sometimes he feels very lonely because he lost his mother at a very young age, despite it had been 70 years by then. On the 4th Tuesday, Morrie said, once you learn how to die, you learn how to live. Because he believed that most of us walk around as if we are sleepwalking. We really don't experience the world fully because we are half asleep, doing things we automatically think we have to do. Yeah, I think that's true. Like it's very robotic that we woke up, we brush, we go to school or we go to job or we do something. But the proper routine mein rakha, and we are just doing that and not living our life just the way we should. But just, surviving and living for the sake of living. Just because we cannot die. But not a reason, ikagai to woke up every day. And he believed that facing death changes your way to perceive the world. You stripe away all the stuff and focus on the essentials. I think that's true. Once you know that you're going to die after a week or a year, you will be focused on the very important things then. You'll not care about some materialistic things that we care about, as we think that we have whole life to do many things in future. Like we can do something in future. 5th Tuesday, they talk about family, a thing which author eagerly wants to discuss about and was in confusion. Mitch has a younger brother which suffered with the same cancer as his uncle did, but he decided to flee to Spain, Europe, and fight it all alone. So actually what happened was that Mitch thought that the cancer that his uncle had, and that was the reason that he died. So he thought that the cancer is going to catch him, but it actually catched his younger brother. So he decided to fight it all alone and didn't meet Mitch for years and years, and went अपनी family को छोड़ के he went to Spain and Europe and just stayed there and tried to fight the disease alone. So he was being almost in no contact with his family, and Mitch was always in guilt. For that, Morrie in his few days realized that family is not just about love, but letting others know that there is someone who is watching out for them. That sense of that this person is there to look out for me is like a sense of feeling that we don't appreciate oftenly. And nothing else or will give you that. Not money, not love, not work, he said, looking at Mitch. As he was workaholic, he worked all day and night, as I told you in the beginning. In further chapters, they talk about the fear of aging, one of the topics in the list of Mitch, in which Morrie exclaimed that he embraces aging. Because according to him, as we grow up, we learn more. Aging is not just decay, but growth. He himself, being 78 and knowing that he is going to die, took his last moments and months of dependency as living his childhood again. To return to those days when we were completely taken care of, unconditional love, unconditional attention. Most of us didn't get it enough. I know I didn't. Despite his soreness about his mother, he wanted younger people to know, if we always try battling aging, we will always be unhappy because we are going to age anyway. Which is, I think, a very good lesson for the people in their 20s or their late 20s. In further Tuesdays, they discuss about emotions. As Mitch went there, he realized that Morrie's wife, Charlotte, if I'm pronouncing it correct, opened the door, which made that obvious that Morrie's health was getting worse. Morrie talks about how you need to detach at some point and accept that emotion. Just like Morrie accepts his fear of probably having his last breath, but then he think about to detach himself from that emotion and give himself time to experience other emotions and enjoy the present. So what he does is, chapter में बताता है, remember, Whenever you feel fear, scared or anything, just accept that emotion that yes, I know I'm scared, but I'm gonna let myself feel other emotions like being at peace, being happy or anything like that, to convince the subconscious to experience other emotions and not to focus on that one thing. So you need to get detached and not just get panicked like we do. We as teenagers often do. On the other hand, when Morrie was not even able to eat the food Mitch bought and others that bought for him, his wife felt that the outsiders were soaking her precious time with Morrie, because Morrie was always busy meeting his students, relatives and Mitch on Tuesdays. His wife was not even with him because he wanted his wife and students and his family members to live their life जैसे वो जी रहे थे पहले भी, not as knowing कि Morrie is going to die, so let's just spend time with him. So she was working, but as Morrie की तबीयत बहुत ज़्यादा खराब हो गई थी, Charlotte also just उनके साथ ही रहने लग गई थी and she did not continued her work for some period of time. But she was not able to spend a lot of time with her husband because a lot of people came and go every single day. On the 9th Tuesday, they talk about how love goes on, where Morrie talk about being asked if he worried about being forgotten after he died, which is I think a very nice question. What do you think? Tell me in the comment section. Are you worried about being forgotten after you die? To which he replied that he gets so many people who have been involved in him closely to love, and love is how you stay alive even after you are gone. With their chit-chat going on, they even discussed and decided fun to write a teacher till his last breath or a teacher of his last on his tombstone, to which Mitch agreed. Then they talk about the importance of life that I got to know and I learned that the importance of being with the person we are with, because we think 10 times of something they told us and we told them in the past or worried about them in future. He always believed not being in hurry and rather put his energies into people. He was always ready to openly display his emotions so oftenly, which is something missing in this generation. Because whenever we meet somebody, we always think about, that is right, what they told us, what we said to them in the past, what the most embarrassing moment or anything. We don't live in the present and invest our energy into them and listening to them. Morrie believed in actually listening to someone without trying to sell them something, pick them or get some status in return. He believed that every person who visited him would have been satisfied with his answers and with the time that he spent on with him, and with the attention that Morrie paid to them despite his personal path and decay. 10th Tuesday, they talk about marriage and Mitchalbon brought his wife Janine to meet Morrie. Every time Morrie asked about his wife, or every time Morrie asked about her, he kept on delaying, but when he brought her, the harmless flirt who was Morrie in that case, looked at their marriage photos and had a nice talk with her. As Janine was a singer professionally, a lot of people asked her to sing few lines, but she being a perfectionist always denied some or the another way politely. When Morrie asked her to sing, so Mitch thought that she would deny at this time too. But she actually sang a song. Mitch was amazed with Morrie's ability to draw emotion from people which they kept otherwise. Afterwards, the author expressed feeling sorry for our generation because people don't understand the value of a loving relationship, which Morrie talked about in the rules of love and marriage. And according to him, those rules were: if you don't respect the other person, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. If you don't know how to compromise, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. If you can't talk openly about what goes on between you, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. And if you don't have a common set of values in life, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. And most importantly, if your values are not alike, like your belief in the importance of a marriage is not alike, then you're gonna have a lot of trouble. That is what is written here. Very nicely, it is said and very factual and real. 11th Tuesday, Morrie tells Mitch that people are only mean when they are threatened, and he believes that our culture and economy teaches us that as people who have jobs are threatened because they're worried about losing it. He continues, it's same for the women not being thin enough and man not being rich enough. It's just that culture would have you believe. Don't believe it. That's what he said. Well, no comments as I haven't seen much of the world to comment on this statement, but okay. But I agree with Morrie when he said, every society has its own problems, and as he was at the verge of dying, more or less, he conveys his thought of investing in human family, investing in people, as they say, building a community of those who you love and who loves you. 12th Tuesday, they talk about forgiveness. Morrie says, forgive yourself, forgive others. Don't wait. Not everyone else gets time. Not everyone is lucky. And he said, as long as we can love each other and remember the feeling of love we had, we can die without ever really going away. All the love you created is still there. All the memories are still there. You live on in the hearts of everyone you have was and nurtured while you were here. Very beautiful in it, right? And he believed that death ends life, not a relationship, which is a very beautiful and काफी सच्ची बात है. I generally believe that even after I die, even after somebody dies, it would end a life, not the bond or anything that we share. Morrie believed that this is not just the other people. Morrie also believed that it's not the other people that we need to forgive. We even need to forgive ourselves for all the things that we decided to do but we couldn't do for some reason. As we cannot stuck on them, and just regret of what could have or should have happened. Further, very politely and beautifully, Mitch wrote that Morrie told him if he could have another son, he would like it to be Mitch. Which is a very beautiful line. I mean, being called I wish I had a child like you is, I think as the children even we'd love as that to have that compliment someday. In the next few pages, the beautiful story is being told by Morrie, which is about an ocean having a good time until one wave sees another wave coming towards him, right? So it gets panic and becomes sad because he believed that all of us are going to be nothing now, all of us are going to be dead or something like that. Whereas the second wave came forward and told the first wave that you don't understand the fact that you are not a wave, you are a part of the ocean. And it has a deep full meaning, I feel, some way or the other, the sentence, and I really like this thing. And on the 14th Tuesday, the last Tuesday they spent together, where Morrie's wife called Mitch a day before and tells him that Morrie is not doing very well, which was a sign that it is time, it is time for Morrie to go and leave them. It is the final days. So Mitch just arrived on Tuesday and Morrie wanted to see Mitch, so he invited them. So Mitch reached up there. Morrie was unusually sleeping for hours because he was extremely unwell, so he was just sleeping for hours. He could not even speak properly at that time. And when he was in his bed, the only thing that was echoing in the author's mind, that was, when you are in bed, you are dead. That was said by Morrie himself. Morrie looked very weak, like a baby, like a very child, and even his pale skin, and he was not even able to speak at that moment. His eyes got small and he cried, and that was the moment that even made Mitch cry, and it finally made him cry. And there was this one more thing where Mitch asked Morrie ki if you got 24 hours to be normal as you were, what will you do? So he said the most basic things, I will woke up, I'll have spring roll, I'll make this, I'll go out, I'll meet my friends, I'll go in the park, I'll dance, because he loved dancing and singing. So he said one of the most basic things that human beings जो daily basis पे probably करते हैं but they don't realize it. तो ऐसा कुछ कहा which actually make him realize ki how down to earth and how practical and how different Morrie was from मतलब वो बहुत ज़्यादा materialistic बन गए थे. Whereas Morrie, even he was about to die, he never shared his sympathy, he wanted empathy, something like that, और अपना ही दुख बांटते रहा. He always listened to everybody. And actually इस chapter का इस book में there is nothing कि chapter वाइज से दे रखा हो कि इससे ये learning मिली, इससे ये learning मिली. It is sentence by sentence, तो तुम्हें कुछ सीखने को मिलता है, and it cannot even describe by words. But if you have watched this video, there is no need to read this book now, I feel so. बट मुझे काफ़ी अच्छी लगी, डेफिनेटली आई वुड से दैट. बट बहुत अच्छी नहीं थी कि मैं किसी को ऐसे फर्स्ट इंप्रेशन में रिकमेंड करूँ प्रोबेबली एज इन अ सेल्फ हेल्प बुक. बट इट इज़ लाइक अ 200 pages book, and this was the guy, and this is mitchalbon. And while reading this book, I didn't feel any other self-help book, I learned this, or this chapter taught me this, but more of I'm listening to two people talking and discussing about life, and it feels good, and it is not boring at all. Definitely I enjoyed reading and it was a good process to read to other conversation, how they're feeling, how old person talks to a younger person, how they look at the life perspective, kitna difference hai, काफी अच्छा लगा वो सब जान के, एंड वाज worth reading and it was fine. And this is the first book that I ever read इतनी जल्दी. And I mean like it was more of like reading a story, and I know that and I actually got connected to those characters क्योंकि काफी deeply उन्हें समझा रखा है in the starting page, because mainly इन दोनों की बात हो रही है, तो काफी अच्छे से इनके बारे में बताता है, who are they, family वगैरह अच्छे से, how was their personality, and reading this conversation feels good. Definitely, and makes me wonder about life and death sometimes. Actually, when I read this, sometimes because I mostly read at night only, and probably teaches me something somehow, more or less, definitely. And बस ending में दे रखा है conclusion where he joined them, and सब लोगों ने बात की. He began his speech by saying dear coach because he liked the term coach very much. Then they celebrated 20th anniversary edition, मतलब book के जो था उस वजह से. And काफी सारे Morrie actually played a very big role in the author's life. That's what I felt. The old professor actually taught him n number of lessons. Like every lesson he learned, it was more than just a professor, I feel. And yeah, with Morrie's funeral, like coffin, वहीं पर रखा गया था just the way he wanted, very serene in a hill जहाँ पर फूल दिख रहे हो. And at the end he said कि Mitch आते रहे, and he said something like in these days I am talking, you are listening, and that time please bring a blanket, please bring some snacks, so that and at that time I'll listen and you will talk. ऐसे करके बहुत beautifully it was framed in the book to tell how even like he's beside a coffin and they converted it into a joke or something. Like it would look weird, people seeing me with a blanket on a coffin and snacks, eating and talking to you. But yep, I think that is something that Morrie actually wanted him to do not forget him, because he knew that he wouldn't forget that. Morrie even said to Mitch that you won't forget me. That's what he wanted, कि लोग उनकी बातों को याद रखें, उनकी आवाज़ सुने बार बार, and don't feel like he's no more in their life. Don't be sad about it. Bless us. But I think it was fun reading this book, and yeah, I won't say this is my favorite book, but it was nice, pretty fine. I won't regret reading this book. And yeah, this is the end of this book, I think, and this is the end of the video too. I hope you liked it. I tried to frame it. I even wrote the notes kind of, ताकि मैं बोल सकूँ अच्छे से, to मतलब मैसेज पहुँचा सकूँ जो मैंने बुक से पढ़ा, जो मुझे लगा. And yeah, this is the end of the video. See you in the next one. Till then, take care and bye-bye, and go watch other videos too if you like self-help books or anything. I have Atomic Habits की summary too. Subconscious mind के principles चल रहे हैं. I stopped the book in between. So you can check all those things out. I'll description में playlist का link दे दूँगी. Okay, yeah, bye-bye.